Hello! A while ago, when the shops were open, I found this in an antique market, and at first I thought it was a miniature set of drawers, which is what caught my eye because how cute is that? But actually what it really is a set of coasters, and they're so manky looking. I'm guessing these are from the 70s or 80s, around that sort of time, and I just kind of had an idea of something to do with it because it's pretty depressing looking as it is, so I thought I would get in and make it look really pretty. So let's get into it. What I was thinking when I was looking at this is, because this just looks really nasty, I'm going to dig out all of the cork if I possibly can. I'll probably sand this down. I'll sand everything down so I can repaint it because this colour is pretty miserable. I don't really like it. I want to paint the entire thing black. It's removing the cork, putting some kind of artwork in here, and then pouring some resin over the top so it goes flat, and then I'll have artwork inside resin on these coasters. I have never in my life used resin, so this is going to be a real experiment, and I hope I don't mess it up too badly. We're still in lockdown at the time of filming this, and most likely when this video gets released, if I can get it done soon enough. But I ended up doing a click and collect. I swear it's so depressing when the highlight of your day is driving down to the local store to pick up your order, but that's what it was. And I got myself a couple of little things here. One of them is liquid gloss, 2-part epoxy resin system. I chose the 500ml kit, and even that is not very big. They had a 240ml one, but that was $30. It's not cheap, this stuff. And the 500ml was $45, so that is much cheaper than 2 packets of 240ml, which still don't add up quite to 500ml. That was like, what, $60 for 2 of them? So yes, $45 is a bit more reasonable, and I figure I can use it for other things. I don't know what yet, but I get the feeling I'm either going to really love using resin or I'm going to hate it and never use it again, so it's not too much if I decide I don't like it. And I also bought some glitter, yay! Actually, because I really want to use some stars, I think, and I couldn't decide which colour. And then I saw that they had this 3Z set of gold, silver, and a pearlescent one. There's also hearts in here. I have a feeling this is going to somehow be involved in this. If not, I'll use it for some other purpose, but who can resist shiny glitter, hearts, and stars? Not me! Alright, let's check out this liquid gloss. So it's equivalent of 50 coats of varnish, easy to mix 1:1 ratio, and touch dry in 24 hours. This is the one that I could find. I am very limited as to what I can buy at the moment, so I'm just going to give this a go. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work. Alright, I'm going to check it out and see what's inside here really quickly. Alright, so we have 2 bottles of the stuff that we use to mix together. It's like any epoxy, they are pretty much inert when they're on their own, but once you mix them together it causes a chemical reaction and they will harden. So one of them is the resin and the other is the hardener. There's some instructions in here. Oh, and there's even, how exciting, a plastic mixer, yay! So you can buy ones which are a starter kit and they come with gloves and little pots and things like that, but I have all that stuff anyway, so I figured I'd just get the bottles and dig out some of my little plastic pots that I always manage to keep and find a use for eventually. So one thing we do need to be careful of, and I have seen it in a few other videos, is that this stuff is toxic, so wearing protective gear is super important. I'm going to be wearing gloves, a respirator, and probably some eye protection as well. I will be making sure that I have my doors open when I use this so that I've got ventilation going through. It's so important to not breathe this stuff in. It's really toxic on your lungs. So safety first always when using really toxic chemicals. But I'm not quite ready to use this yet. I have to do quite a lot of preparation on this to get it ready, and I also need to think of what I'm going to paint as well. So my idea, there are 9 little drawers, and I was thinking, what can I do? I've kind of got this galaxy feeling in my head, and I was thinking, well, maybe I could do the planets. I think Pluto is going to have to be reinstated as a planet so that I have 9 of them. It's either that or I paint the sun, but I just didn't think that feels right. I think it would be more fun to include Pluto in there. Oh my gosh, I have so much to do here. I think the first thing I need to do is prepare all of this, so I need to dig all of that out, sand it all, and then I'm going to paint it black. Yay! That's my favourite part, is painting things black.
So I dug out all of the cork using these little tools that I had. I'd bought them ages ago at a local hardware store. They're wax carving tools, and I just randomly bought them on impulse because I saw them there and thought they were really cute. I've never used them before, but they came in really handy for this project. And of course, because we're in lockdown, I could not go out to buy anything that I needed, so I'm basically using just everything that I have in the studio.
Well, there's one scraped out as much as possible. I may end up sanding this. I have another 8 of these to do, so I think I'm going to do these off camera, and I will come back when I have finished digging out all of that annoying cork. Well, I've got them all scraped out as much as I possibly can with that little scraper thing. So my next task will be to sand it all. I'm going to try and sand this as smoothly as I can get it, and also sand all of this other shiny wood so that I can paint over it and not have it scrape off easily. I will no doubt sand everything outside because it makes such a mess in the studio. Okay, I took some time outside and I've sanded down this entire thing. It's still got some of the varnish on there, but I just got sandpaper and roughed it all up so that the paint will stick to it, because otherwise on a glossy surface it just will not stick properly. And in the drawers, I've taken off as much as I possibly can. I used a little hobby tool, Dremel thing, to try and sand as much off. It is so stubborn, it just will not budge, some of that glue, without me burning it a little bit, so I just kind of got off the worst. It's mostly smooth, there's a little bit of texture in parts, but I figured that if I'm going to be painting planets, it will probably add to it, so I'm not too worried about that. And now for the fun part, painting. I'm so excited to get to this bit. I absolutely hate sanding, but it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. I've got some of this Langridge black decorative primer. I really like this stuff. It dries nice and smooth, it's very matte, and it's a perfect surface to start off any kind of painting. I've got a little off-cut piece of MDF wood. I'm just going to put this on here so that when I paint on it I can then lift the whole thing up and move it to somewhere else to dry.
I painted everything on this box with 2 coats of black paint, letting it dry in between, and you'll see me alternating between the box part here and then also the coaster drawers, because I'd have to let one side dry before I could fully flip it over to the other. It was very time consuming, but I also really just love painting primer on wood because it's so relaxing, and I really didn't have to think about actually making the artwork yet. I just wanted to cover everything with black.
Well, that's everything painted with 2 coats, and it wouldn't be a project if I didn't get myself covered in paint as well, so I'm going to clean all of this up. I need to let this sit and dry properly, probably for a few hours, just to make sure it's really dry. I like painting, it looks better already now that everything's black. And here it is with a couple of coats of that lovely black primer on it. I really like how it has a very matte but slight sheen to it. I mean, I could leave it like this because it looks really good, but that wouldn't be much of a video, so I'm going to continue and actually get painting on the insides of these, because these are not looking so great. You could see where there's still glue and stuff stuck onto the backing of that board. Okay, so let's get into decorating this properly.
This was definitely the most time-consuming part of the project, painting all of these planets. In reality, I was painting them simultaneously and letting layers dry as I worked on others, but I've put all the clips together just so that I'm doing one planet each. So the first one here is Mercury. I don't know how accurate my paintings are of these planets. I'm going to tell you that now. I basically plugged the names of the planets into Google and brought up the images. Then I went through and picked one that caught my eye. Some of them look a little bit different than other ones, so I'm not exactly sure how accurate I have made these, but I had a lot of fun painting them. This one's Venus, and this was probably the most difficult one. It's like a really fiery looking planet, and my flames did not look very good on this, unfortunately. Oh dear. But I was right in that the bits of glue that was still stuck on kind of made a really great texture for a planet, so it worked out really well, and this one took ages. Also, the paints I'm using were quite translucent with the reds and yellows, so I had to mix in white and then go over the layers again. For Earth, I drew in Australia because that's from my point of view, and there's also New Zealand just there in the corner. I think out of all of the planets, this is the one I had the most fun with, mostly because it's our planet, and so it's the one I know the best. I just did a mix of blues, yellows to get that green, and then I'm going back in with the ultramarine blue for the ocean. I am very limited in the paints that I'm using. These are golden open acrylics, some of my absolute favourite acrylic paints because they're slow drying and I had plenty of time to do the layers and mix the paints together, so I really enjoyed using these, though they did take a bit longer than I would have liked for them to dry. So this whole project did take a long time, at least a week, just, because I needed drying time in between doing everything. And then I painted clouds over the top of Earth, as you would imagine it from space. Going on to Mars. I'm painting an opaque layer of red mixed with white so that the black doesn't show through as much, and then I let that dry before painting over pure red and yellow, which are far more translucent, and it really just brightened up everything. So I'm just mixing in a few of my limited colours there, a little bit of Payne's Grey just to add some shadows on the planet, as much as what the reference image was showing. I don't know if that looks like Mars, but that's what we got. The next one is Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. And of course, these planets are not to scale, otherwise Jupiter would be probably the size of my house, but I'm taking artistic liberties, and all of my planets are the same size. Thankfully, I did have enough colours in my collection to paint all of the planets, I guess, relatively close to what they look like, but it would be really great to add some more golden colours to my collection. I'm waiting for the art shops to open up again before I go and maybe buy a few more. They're not cheap, so I'm not in a huge rush, but I really love these paints. I've used them quite a few times now, and they are just growing more and more on me. They're so much easier to use than fast-drying acrylic paints. And now we're on to Saturn. I drew some rings around onto the coaster, and I've actually gone over the sides so it's not just cut off on the edges. The rings were really difficult to do because they're very translucent around Saturn, and you can see I'm going around the sides there just to make it look like it makes a bit more sense. And I also grabbed that Payne's Grey, which is my darkest colour, just to define those rings a bit more because I kept painting over the lines and they were just a bit of a mess. This one was really tough to do. I think of all of the planets, Saturn was the most difficult. And then farther out into the galaxy we have Uranus, the most unfortunately named planet of them all. It's a really pretty one though. It's this lovely light turquoise blue colour, and according to the pictures that I was seeing, it also has a ring around it. Not quite as noticeable as Saturn's rings, but I added them in just to give a subtle shape around there. And next one is Neptune. This is a much darker blue, and it is the most distant planet now that we have got rid of Pluto. So it's a very deep colour. It was probably the least defined, so I just added in a little bit of highlight to give it some kind of definition and not be just a flat blue disc. And then of course we've got good old Pluto, which is in fact a dwarf planet, so it is too small to be considered a proper planet. But I wanted to include it as an honorary member of our little solar system. This one's really pretty, actually, the pictures I was looking at. And because they were looking a little flat, I decided to glue on some glitter, just in subtle areas, although of course I went a little bit overboard, because once I get going with the glitter, it is very hard to stop. I think it really saved Venus because I covered most of that yellow with gold glitter, and then I thought that I would cover the countries with glitter on Earth. Mars, I've just added a bit of red in random places to make it shine. Jupiter is probably my most favourite glittery one. I think the line of it looks really good. And then I've gone and put these out of order, haven't I? So we have Uranus first. I put the glitter on the rings, and Saturn should be where that is, but here it is. I just somehow had those two mixed around. So I put silver glitter all over Saturn's rings to make it really pop. And I think this was a wise choice. I think it looks so much better now, and you can just really see how that ring goes across the planet and then behind it on the far side to make it look like an actual sphere with a ring around it. A tiny bit on Neptune just to make it pop a little bit more, and last of all is Pluto.
There we go. I'm not sure if that's improved them, but I do like the glitter accents on them. I really like how the rings have come out as well. I think that just looks a lot more fun, and they've really come alive. So my next task is going to be pouring the resin. So I've set up my resin pouring station right by my open door, so I've got plenty of ventilation. I've got these just all ready to go. I've got my gloves, ventilator mask, my protective goggles, an apron, the liquid gloss, and this basket just in case Gandalf decides to walk on these when they are setting. I've actually closed them out of the studio because it's pretty toxic and I don't want the cats near it. I also have these old silicone ice cube trays because I am sure I'm probably going to make up far too much, so I can always pour it into those and end up with a few little silicone hearts or something. So these will not be used for any kind of food consumption ever again. They're now going to be resin molds. And I also have 2 little ice cream cups which I'm going to use to mix the resin into. I think that will be enough to fill these. I have no idea. I am completely guessing here.
The resin pouring took ages as well because I was so worried I wasn't going to get the mixes right. So I spent a lot of time making sure that I had both A and B at exactly the same level as each other. It was easier to put them into 2 pots and then pour the thinner hardener into the resin which was in the first pot. So you can see me doing that now. I was slowly pouring it in. It sped up on here because it took ages, and I scraped out as much as I possibly could so that the quantities would remain equal and actually harden properly. And here's me stirring in real time. I went really slowly because I didn't want to get too many bubbles. You can see there's a few in there, but if you mix really quickly you'll get loads of bubbles. And so here I go, pouring my first one, my first ever time using resin, and it turned out okay. It wasn't as scary as I thought. It moved really well, and I was able to just gently tilt the coasters to let that resin run right to the edges. I did not fill them quite to the top, but they're just a little bit lower because I didn't want it to go everywhere. And you can see I'm dripping it all over that plastic there, which is why you need to cover your table as well, because once that resin gets on there, it's really hard to take off. It's very sticky and it just clings to everything. And you also want to make sure it doesn't touch your skin because it can cause a lot of irritation and allergies in people. I noticed when the resin went on that the glitter started to really show up a lot more, and it looks so awesome together. I'm quite impressed with this brand of resin that I bought. It seems to be incredibly glassy and transparent. There's just no cloudiness whatsoever. The instructions were pretty good, it was easy to use, and also it doesn't have too much of a bad smell. There is a little bit, but nowhere near what I was expecting. So even though I was wearing the ventilator, I don't actually think this particular brand of resin is actually that toxic, but I still don't trust any epoxy and I'd rather play it safe. So I had quite a lot left over, as you can imagine. I've poured out far too much, and I got into my heart-shaped molds here, adding in a few of those shiny stars. It didn't work very well. As soon as I started adding the resin over the top of the stars, they would just move out to the edges. You'd think I'd have figured that one out, but it was a bit of a mess. Anyway, the second one I added in some gold glitter just to see what would happen there. Quite a lot of gold glitter in the end there, but as soon as I poured in that resin it all moved out to the sides. Probably it would be better to mix the glitter into the resin before pouring it, but I didn't want to do that for these. I have a lot to learn with resin, so look out for future videos on that.
Well, it's been 24 hours, they've all completely dried, and look how amazing they are. I cannot believe how awesome that looks. Every single one of them looks so much better with the resin inside. How cool is earth? I'm glad I added the glitter to the countries, it makes it pop so much. So next I'm going to pop those hearts out and see what I got with those. Well, I got them out eventually. They're not great. The silicone mold is not shiny enough on the inside, and so it's caused the resin to be quite opaque on the parts where it was touching the mold, so I'm not sure if I can polish those up or anything. I mean, you can see the glitter's gone through, although it didn't do very well on here. It's either at the bottom or at the top, and on this one you can feel the roughness of the glitter, so it did all float to the top when I was pouring it in. So I will get on to painting the rest of this.
I couldn't just leave the box a plain black, so in order to keep with my theme, I painted the Milky Way galaxy on top of the box and also around the sides. It's a bit of a mess, I didn't do very well with this, but it kind of came together in the end. And what I didn't film after I'd painted the box is I also added some glitter and other things to it. Also a heavy layer of clear acrylic gloss over everything just to keep it from getting damaged and glitter falling off. So once I've painted this box, I will show you the big reveal of what it looks like. And now to show you how it came out. I'm so excited. Here it is before in its ugly brown state. And here it is after, all shiny and pretty. I'm so happy with this. And you may notice I added in some of those larger glitter stars to the outside of the box. I wrote the names of each planet on one end of the coaster, which you can't see unless you completely pull it out. I figured I'd probably forget which ones are which, so this is just an easier way to keep them in order. I had to use a silver paint pen. It's a thicker nib than I would have liked, but once again the shops aren't open, so I just had to make do with what I had. I love Earth, that's my favourite. I love how the glitter looks on Australia. So this took absolutely ages to do, but I just love how it turned out. I'm really proud of this. It is probably the most favourite thing I've done all year in terms of paintings and projects. It was just the best time. I think it just looks 1,000 times better than it did in its original state, and I'm so glad to have given this a new lease of life. What do you think? Do you like it? Or do you think it looks really tacky? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I am absolutely thrilled with how the resin turned out. That is my favourite thing, and it is so smooth. Look how clear it is. I'm really pleased that I didn't get much in the way of air bubbles. I think 1 or 2 have maybe 1 air bubble in them, but it's so unnoticeable that it's not a problem. And so I'm quite pleased that I was able to follow the instructions and get the resin to work properly by having it at exact ratios. It took a while to do, but once I got the hang of it, I was instantly hooked, and I really want to do some more resin pouring in the future. The 2 hearts that I did, they weren't super great, but I did manage to fix them up a bit by painting some of the clear coat that I used on this box, and I just put it over the top, and now look how much shinier they are. They're not perfect, but they do look a lot better than they did. But that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click that subscribe button. Let me know if you like these sorts of videos, because I have plenty of other junk that I can paint and do up. I love doing makeovers on old thrift store finds because it's just so much fun to find something that's really ugly in the thrift shop and no one wants it, and then paint it up and make it all pretty and desirable once again. So I will see you really soon in my next video, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day out there. Swatch you later. Bye!